Hey there, friends. Wilk here. I am so incredibly grateful that you're taking the time to tune in for another DTH episode. I am taking some much needed time off to spend some time with family, do a little bit of traveling, and just catch up on so many different things. That said, please stay tuned for this classic DTH episode, and remember, make each and every day the day that you want it to be. Cue the intro. Welcome back, my friends, to the Derate The Hate podcast. I am your host, Wilk of WilksWorld.com, and I am so incredibly grateful that you are taking the time to join me for another powerful DTH episode. Friends, at the Derate The Hate podcast, it's all about bettering the world one attitude at a time. See, we did not create the hate, but with your help, we can derate the hate. That all starts with gratitude and personal accountability. We cannot control everything that happens to us in life, but we can control how we react to it. How we act, how we react, no matter what happens to us, how we react to it makes the difference. Friends, there is only one good thing about a bad attitude, and that is that we have the ability as individuals to change it. Here on the DTH podcast, we strive to bring you great guests and provide tools to do just that. Please be sure to share it with your friends. Subscribe if you haven't done so. Ratings and feedback are always greatly appreciated. And with that, let's get to this week's episode. Dr. Tabia Lee, thank you for joining me on the Derate The Hate podcast. I am so grateful to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Recently, I saw an article. I've had conversations with several people from the organization FAIR, Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism. And what caught my eye was the fact that they're helping you out with a situation right now that would probably blow the average person's mind. I mean, it's one of these things. So I want to make sure I get this right. So you were the faculty director of the Office of Equity, Social Injustice, and Multicultural Education at De Anza Community College in California. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a Office of Equity, Social Justice, and Multicultural Education. Yes, okay. It's a long title. I had to practice that for a long time.
I was going to say, it's kind of hard to fit that on a business card, right?
Yeah, yes.
So,
good thing I didn't get any cards made.
yeah. So, and then that role has just as of recently come to an end for you, which is, why we're talking, because the circumstances behind it really caught my eye, caught me off guard. And I think a lot of people that hear this, as your story comes out to more people, Dr. Lee, I think people are going to realize that some of this stuff there's a lot of merit in the diversity, equity, and inclusion. More people are starting to see it in schools. They're starting to see it in their workplaces. They're starting to have, we have them at work. We have them, like I said, in the schools. They're being presented in so many different ways. Some of them have very good value to what they're doing. Others not so much. And I've seen so much across the spectrum when it comes to these DEI trainings and these DEI seminars and stuff like that. So let's just start off, and we'll tell everybody that you were not necessarily walking in lockstep with what the school's idea was with regard to the DEI orthodoxy. Is that right? Because they've just released you from that position.
Right. So, that's the first question that a lot of people have. Well, so often, they say like, did you get in there and, you just weren't fitting and, they just decided to let you go. But this is an instance where, first, I'm a lifelong educator. I've been teaching my whole life. This is my vocation. And I've always not only just taught in my classroom, but taught other teachers outside the classroom. So done teacher trainings and professional development and stuff. And so I tried for a long time to get a tenure track position. And for many years, I couldn't land one. I did adjunct teaching for many years in the higher ed sector because I just couldn't even get an interview for a tenure track. So when this opened up at De Anza, this position, and I was called, for an interview, I went through a rigorous process with De Anza College. There was multiple panels. I had to do a teaching demonstration. This was one of the most rigorous processes for hiring that I've gone through in my career. And as I became a finalist, I was surprised to actually be in the finalist category, because some of the things that were shared with me through those panels, they identified, I guess, what people call one of their pain points,
Mm-hmm.
and they said the office you will be working for is one that's a little too woke. That's how I didn't use that term. They used the
too
term.
woke.
Yes. And they said, and it makes the faculty feel alienated. They feel like they can't go there for support or resources, because they'll get called out. Some, have been called racist and all these other kinds of things. And I was very honest with the panel about who I am. And I thought I was too honest. That's why I didn't think I was going to advance through.
Sure.
I told them, I don't identify as woke. I said, I'm just a teacher. And what I try to do is I try to bring people who are different, diverse together to, really talk about the different ways we approach things and identify common points that we share so we can best serve our students. That's like the thrust of my work and how I approach my work. So I told them who I was, like, it's not like I got in and I switched around or did something, underhanded or something. But what happened was the situation got switched around on me,
okay.
Because once I was in, wherever I go, like I do DEI consulting too, and like teacher ed consulting.
Sure.
I hesitate to use the term now because when you say it, some people are like, "Oh, it shouldn't even exist." Like there's that reaction. But it is a whole industry, a multi-billion-dollar industry. So yeah. I mean, it's happening somewhere.
Well, and I think. I don't know if you'll agree with me on this, but I think a lot, like I said, this is something that's popping up more and more in different educational institutions, and we're seeing it in corporate settings and more and more workplace settings and things like that. But the point where it's gone too far is when it has gone with this and this super woke or and people from the grievance industry and these race hustlers are going in and just implanting their toxicity into these DEI trainings and people come away. I've had multiple guests on my podcast talking about DEI trainings and including somebody that you quote often, Dr. Sheena Mason, who I absolutely love, and the idea that you have to bring one group of people down to try and bring another group of people up. People see that, and that's now become associated with these DEI trainings and this DEI orthodoxy. So of course it's going to get a bad name, because when you feel like or when people feel like they're being brought down to somehow inflate somebody else, that's not the way to get anywhere. I mean, I think we as human beings, people that can see, sit down and have a conversation with each other and look for the humanity in everybody, know that is not the way to go about things.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And when they hired me on and I told them, how I approach it, and that is my aim, to bring people together and create dialogue spaces. Like that's even part of my research and stuff. Like they looked at my CV. I'm sure they clicked and saw the stuff I published, So it's like I wasn't hiding, but what happened with me, it really is unfortunate, and it speaks to like the insular nature of some of our community college spaces, even though they're public schools. Mm-hmm. Some groups are treating them like they belong to them, and instead of belonging to the people, the public that we should be serving as public school educators. And that just burns me up inside, Will, because I'm very passionate about the mission of public education in California.
Oh, I
And I
can tell.
feel
Yeah.
like if you're working there, you're there for everybody, not just for a small group or this group or that group. You're there for the community, and the community is diverse. And unfortunately, me having that opinion, that was a wrong too. Everything that I felt or done in my teaching and learning was deemed something that was inappropriate or wrong, and inverted into a negative somehow. It was just like being in the twilight zone as I started there, and it started as soon as my second weekend to my job.
So this is where it gets so frustrating for me, is because here we've got a person who is genuinely devoted to educating the public, not the white public, not the black public, the public, genuinely devoting their life, their career, everything about you is to educate people, and education is the key to a better world, right? And now all of a sudden, you as the faculty director for the Office of Equity, Social Justice, and Multicultural Education is now being accused of white splaining and white speaking and trying to make excuses and even, and this is one of the things that really burns me up personally. I mean, I can't speak for other people, but I know it burns other people up because they've told me, is things like, okay, so I'm going to have an agenda for this meeting, and we're going to do this, this, and this, and we're going to follow this agenda. And because you're using structure, you're respecting others' time, you're respecting your time, you're trying to do things in a just an organized fashion. Now all of a sudden that's a white thing, and you're promoting white supremacy. So my question for you, Dr. Lee, is, have you now, or are you now, or have you ever been a white supremacist? Because you don't look like you fit the profile.
That's what was so, when that event happened, and this was a few weeks in, I was just so confused, but it hurt what the person said, because a little bit about my background. I'm California native, born in California, but I was born in Stockton, raised in Lodi, California, a very small town. And I had actual encounter with actual white supremacists in that town. I mean, like avowed KKK members and neo-Nazis.
Sure, yeah.
That's what I've always heard and known and seen to be white supremacy. So to have one of my coworkers call me a white supremacist, I was just like, that can't be. How could you even say that? And then they said that I was being transactional, and white speaking and white splaining. I've been doing this kind of work for many years. No one had ever said that to me. No one had ever called me those kind of names. And then when I said, like, hey, what you're saying feels real uncomfortable. Like, please don't say that to me. I haven't called you any names. Like, please don't call me names. The rest of the team and the person then began to act as though I was the offender and that I had offended him. And it was like a complete inversion of everything. Like everything was upside down. And that was just the first instance. This went on and on. That was just the first strike. And from that time, my team members became hostile towards me. I was the offensive one because I said, please don't call me that. I didn't even return a mean name or do anything. I said, just that feels uncomfortable. Please don't.
As well, it should. I mean, that's it, and that's one of the bigger things that bothers me about society today, Dr. Lee, is we've gotten to a point where far too many people have become comfortable with calling people racist, calling people, I don't care if it's racist, sexist, transphobic, homophobic, whatever. Those things do two things. Number one, it's hurtful to say that to somebody, especially when they're not. I've been accused of that before, and thankfully I don't let stuff like that hurt my feelings, and I don't get offended. But others do. And then the other thing that it does, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, is it devalues what that actually is to people who have actually experienced it. Like you said, you grew up and you actually saw real white supremacists, real Nazis. The vast majority of people in this country have probably never met, nor will they ever meet, a true white supremacist or a true neo-Nazi. They are out there. There's nobody denying it. There's racists out there. There's nobody denying that. But there's not a racist hiding under every bed, right? And a neo-Nazi hiding in every closet, waiting to do their evil upon you. And I think most reasonable people understand that. But what's happened in this country now is they try to turn disagreements into something that they're not, which then devalues the reality of those that have suffered it. I can't stand it. We've reached a point in history now where most Holocaust survivors have now passed on. Most people who fought real Nazis, back in the 40s and saved the world from Nazism, most of those people are now gone, and have gone on to a better place. But to call people that you disagree with or that kind of thing does such an injustice to the people who have fought against that for so many years. Like I said, I think you and I both said it. DEI training was really started with the best of intentions, and there's a lot of good that came of it. I want to read, your article that you recently wrote in, for Free Black Thought, and the race ideology in practice and racial equity in the American learning environments. There's a paragraph in that article that I want to read. I understand where you're going with it, but I want you to explain it because I think it's incredibly important. So you talk about the first, second, and third waves of anti-racism in this paragraph, and I want to get some clarification on that because it is so incredibly important. So the paragraph goes: American education has racist problem. The American schooling system and our society at large were set up to promote and socialize folks into racial ideologies. Well-documented pushes for racial equality during the first and second waves of anti-racism attempted to right those wrongs in our schools and in our communities. However, in recent years, neo-reconstructionist racist race hustlers have become dominant in educational discourse and beyond, threatening to push us backwards and further into the deeps of racial strife and division with hyper-focus, redefining racism as systemic and a promotion of equity over equality that are advancing under a third wave of anti-racist banners, which some argue have done more harm than good. I believe that was a quote from John McWhorter. Under the banner of diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in many learning environments, a neo-reconstructionist racist orthodoxy has emerged that actively works to suppress and exclude alternative frameworks, methods, ways, and means for dealing with American education's racist problem. So please, first of all, just for my clarification, because when I think of the phrase anti-racism and anti-racist, my mind goes to the works of Ibram X. Kendi, which I'm not a fan, but I do think that race hustlers have done an immense amount of damage to the work that has been done and I think what you refer to as the first and second wave of anti-racist progress that was made and was continuing to be made until this third wave of just, well, now they call it wokeism, right? So kind of talk to me about that particular paragraph, because I think it's very insightful And I think people need to understand what you're saying there. And I just want some clarification from me.
Awesome, awesome. So if you notice, each time you're saying racist, it's RACE and then in parentheses is. That is something from Dr. Sheena Mason's way of writing and understanding. Yes, the theory of racelessness. And, I do credit her because she really opened my eyes to so much in the race philosophies of race and, all of these things that just made me question and think about things more critically myself, what I'm always encouraging folks to do. So, so when I say there's a racist problem, the problem is we're focusing too much on race and not racism. And I love Sheena for helping that distinguishment to, develop in me as a scholar and that level of understanding, that she's bringing to folks. Because the waves of anti-racism that I am mentioning, that is from John McWhorter's work. When I read that book, Woke Racism, I was like, he's got it. Like he nailed it. I don't agree with everything, but certain parts, and especially about the waves and how they played out, he nailed it. Why I focus on that because the word anti-racism is being used nowadays. It didn't just start. This has been work that's been going on for many, many years, and there's been different waves of it, as John McWhorter explains.
Yep.
In those initial waves, there was this focus on equality and having equal status and civil rights, all the things that we think of. Something that the third wave anti-racists do is they try to tear down and disparage everything that took place before. So if you're talking to some of these individuals who are aligned with the third wave anti-racists, they really always say equity and equality are two different things. Equalities of the past. We're talking about equity right now. And then you ask them, well, what's equity? I haven't heard a clear definition yet, but I've seen pictures of people standing on boxes and different sizes and apples falling from a tree. And someone told me once that means everybody gets some apples. I mean, I've heard a bunch of different squishy, strange things when I ask, what is your definition of equity? And in my work at De Anza College, some of the first things I was doing was bringing people together because I heard from folks there, we're all saying these words, but we all mean different things. And that's why we can't move and do anything, and so that's why my work was, so important. I think that's why I was selected. But as I started to bring people together, that wasn't okay. So just unpacking, what's being said there, I'm bringing up that separation, this division of equity from equality. From my perspective, and it's just mine, I feel like equity and equality are intertwined. They're co-conditions. You can't just work on one and not have the other. And some third wave anti-racists will tell you we're done with equality, and present discrimination is justified due to past discrimination, and all these other kinds of strange ideas that some people may find strange. I don't want to offend anyone, because some people they hold this and they believe it.
Sure, yeah.
And that's okay, but just know there's other ways of viewing it too. And not everyone's saying that, in the DEI field. At least I wasn't, but you saw how long I got to stay in the DEI field with that opinion. But sure. I just don't think we can separate those two things. I think you need both. I think you need to have equality of opportunity. And, I think you need to have equality of access. And the problem that I have with equity, in the way that third wave anti-racists define it especially, is that there's this push for, the only push or thing that they talk about equality around is equality of outcomes. And that's...
And I think that's where things get real ugly for people when they start to look at this, because the second they see the word equity now, because equity is equality of outcome, But and I like what you're saying, because I think the two do have to be intertwined, because I don't think you can ever guarantee the equality of outcome. You can't. We are different. We have different skill sets. We have different drives. We have different ambitions. We have different life purposes. You cannot, without without some type of authoritarian dictatorship mentality, you cannot ensure equality of outcome. The only thing that you can ensure is the equality of opportunity. So the best way to ensure equity is through equality, and that's equality of opportunity. And then the outcome is what the outcome is, right? Because I mean, if you try to ensure equity without, recognizing equality, you're just trying to undo anything that you were ever trying to do in the first place. And that's why this whole thing, when we talk about racist race hustlers and things that bother me so much, is the fact that they want to, and I've talked about this on the Derate The Hate podcast so many times, Dr. Lee, you cannot fight hate with hate. You cannot eliminate racism by promoting racism, which is one of my biggest problems with Ibram X. Kendi. That's that whole thing of, you did my people wrong back then, so I'm going to do your people wrong now. That's trying to battle hate with hate. The thing that was done before, totally wrong. The thing you're doing now, totally wrong. It's all based in evil. The thing that you were trying to do at De Anza College, and the thing that I have so much respect for, is when people are truly trying to bring people together, trying to teach people about each other. Just like I said in so many different settings and so many talks that I've given it so many times on the Derate The Hate podcast, it is so important, as my friend Daryl Davis talks about, to eliminate the ignorance, because the ignorance is what leads to the fear, which is what leads to the hate and anger and violence. If you are trying to keep people ignorant in hopes of trying to produce some equitable outcome, you are doing nothing more than perpetuating the hate that you supposedly were trying to get rid of in the first place.
Yes. And when we think about what's the end game, right, with this push for equality of outcomes, it's not something that I think most people, if you just think it through to its, conclusion, after all the dismantling's done and the destruction is done, like that's the other part that's missing from that particular perspective. What happens after that? Like no one has been able to tell me. It's just, we need to destroy it. We need to bring down capitalism. We need to bring down America. And it's like, bring it down. Then what? What do we do next? What is the plan? Besides destruction? I just hear destruction and division and, putting people in categories and castes almost that they are locked into and that they can never break free from. Some people are victims, some are oppressors, and we're going to start them young thinking in that way, and that they have no agency, and that they can't be creative, and, that there's limits to their humanity. That's something I can't sign on to. It's very problematic. And I know some people really hold it as, that's their goal and their mission, and they're going to work towards it. And if you oppose it, that's the other part that I have an issue with. Like, if you even question it, not even opposing it, but just ask some questions, you have to be eliminated and silenced, and you're a danger to society. I've been told that through my tenure review process.
and it's so bad because, I've talked so many times on this podcast. It's one of the first things I started talking about on this podcast is the perpetual victim mentality. And so the perpetual victim mentality goes right along with the reticular activating system in our brain. And if you are, and this is, this is me, Wilk, saying it. I will say it until the day that I die, is if you are raising your child to believe that they are a victim, you are committing child abuse. You are, if you are instilling in their brain that you are a victim and you will continue to be victimized, their brain, because the human brain, we're all humans. We all have the human brain, and the human brain has a reticular activating system, and we can only focus on so many things at any given time. If you are raising your children to believe that they are a victim, they will constantly seek out points of affirmation to remain a victim, and they will spend their life miserable victims. And I think that type of behavior, which is, again, we go back to that word race hustlers, right? They make money. They gain popularity by convincing people they are victims. And then once they've got you in that victim box, they keep you in that victim box. And they put you on a shelf, and every time they need you, they pull down their victim box and put you on display for everybody else. It's horrible. It's evil. And so, folks like us, Dr. Lee, that are out there trying to present solutions, trying to make the conversation happen. Like I said, I love DEI on its face, right? And the true intention of diversity, equity, and inclusion training is so very important. So important. But so many people have hijacked that and turned it into something that it's not, and it's actually become, in many cases, counterproductive. And I hate to see that. I do. I hate to see that, because I'm somebody who literally wants the world to be a better place. I think that there was a lot of work done between the 1960s and the early 2000s to make that happen. But I think the grievance industry and wokeism and those types of, call it whatever you want to, has hijacked that and kind of taken us in a different direction, hasn't it?
Oh, yes. And that's why I do point that out. In that paragraph that you shared, just continuing to unpack that, that's an important thing to think about, because we are literally moving backwards in many settings, not just at schools, but in corporations, in civic organizations. You see these things popping up, like they're called affinity groups. And they're often racialized affinity groups, and segregating people and putting them in these groups to discuss things, and then you're assigned your group, or I guess you assign yourself sometimes, or maybe the DEI specialist assigns you, and then you're stuck in that group, right? And we can't all speak together. We have to talk to our tribe. And then we're allowed to maybe come back in and convene as a whole group of whole humans. It's so strange to me, the resegregation of schools after all the work and progress that was made. I focus on schools a lot because I'm a teacher. So, to see these groups popping up in schools, not just in higher ed, but now even in like K through 12. So we're putting our little ones in these groups. And sometimes parents don't even know. And like you said, I concur with you. It is pure child abuse. And I don't think it's parents doing it. I think sometimes our little ones are at school, and it's the teacher and the, administration and the school structure that's bringing these things, and the DEI officer that's now in every school.
Right.
What's that about? So it's just, it's troubling, and it is abusive. And it needs to stop. And I think that the more people hear about it and start looking into it, you used to think like, oh, I send my child off to school, they're getting a good education and they're learning, the things that they need to learn to be successful. Well, I guess they're learning the things they need to be successful in the new order that's emerging, and I
Yeah.
hope that there can be a resistance to that, and that people will look up and say, "Let me go check in. What is really going on over there at the school? What did you learn today?" Just checking in more, I think,
Mm-hmm.
is going to just be very helpful. And then when you hear about these groups and things, going in and asking questions. I know everybody's busy and we've got all these things going. Some of us working multiple jobs. I mean,
Right,
it's hard
right.
to just do all that, but it's a worthwhile thing to do because you may be shocked at some of
Yeah.
the things that are happening. And think about it, children are there for 6 hours, sometimes 8 hours of their day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a huge chunk of time.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone's telling you that whole time that you're an oppressor or your people are oppressors and you're a victim, you get to do this because of equity, and everyone else is going to do something else different. I mean, all of these things, these messages that are getting sent in that are forming young minds and young people and what they think of their futures and what they can be. It's forming the way they interact with themselves and the sense of agency that they may have
Right.
or not that may be just being drilled out of them every
Mm-hmm.
day for 8 hours.
Yep.
So I think it's just critical that we're more vigilant and involved. I know it's difficult, but it's that important because this is literally the future, right?
It is.
And
Absolutely.
what's happening in those spaces, I don't know. I understand now why homeschooling is rising so much.
Oh,
So
for sure.
sometimes people say like school choice. It's like, well, what are my choices? Like it's
Right.
this or this again or this again. It's like, where do I go?
Yeah. Do you want
So
steaming pile of A or steaming pile of B? Right? So, no, I think you're absolutely right, Dr. Lee. Parental engagement is so incredibly important. But I think what's happening in these schools, and you're right. But when I think about, my boy in school right now, he's in school for I think 7 hours a day, right? Then when he comes home, he may have some homework, goes in his room, messes around on his computer. The school has him for 7 hours a day. We might see him for dinner.
yeah,
We're trying. I mean, obviously, we try to engage him more, and we certainly engage him at the dinner table when it comes to what's going on in school every day. That's a question. What did you do in school today? What classes did you have? What did they talk about? What kind of things were that parental engagement is incredibly important. But parents do have to realize that, right? 7 hours a day in the school, a couple hours at home. By the time they get home, get off the bus, get their
right.
homework done, you eat dinner. It may be, even if they're not in their room doing something, that amount of time, it's a very lopsided. So you
Mhm.
have to be hyper vigilant in your thing because the school system is absolutely, just like I talked about earlier, putting people in boxes now.
Mhm.
They're conditioning them to be in the boxes.
Mhm.
That way, it's not such a shock when they get out in the real world and now your politicians are putting you in boxes or your bosses are putting you in boxes or your whatever. So people have to resist that conditioning so they understand I'm not predisposed for this or I'm not predisposed for that. I don't have to react to this the way they want me to react to this. I am going to be the I'm going to be the power structure in my own life, and I get to choose how I react to things. Parents,
Mhm.
that really begins with parental engagement. It begins with strong mentors. Like it's so important to find the right people to engage your children. It's one part of the parents. Unfortunately, I'm not a fan. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not a fan of the public school system at all. But I've talked about that plenty. But the reality is it doesn't have to be that way. It wasn't that way when I was in school. And I don't know what it was like. I don't know what it was like in California. I didn't go to school there, but it certainly wasn't that way when I was in school. And I didn't like school when I was in school. Just full disclosure. But it's not the way now that it was then. And I don't see things getting better. And so taking this thing full circle, we talked about my friend Dr. Sheena Mason, her theory of racelessness. We talked about John McWhorter, the woke racism and things like that. There is so many good voices out there. There are definite merits to true diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are the most successful, most beautiful, most freedom-loving, multicultural nation on the planet. If we are going to stay that way, we must have diversity, equity, and inclusion. Mm-hmm. But just like you and I talked about, we cannot have equity without equality. You can't have one without the other. You cannot fight racism with racism. You cannot fight hate with hate. We don't want our kids to live in this world of segregation that some are promoting today. We don't want them conditioned to be in the box. So, Dr. Lee, take us home. Just talk to me about what you want to see as the result of this. I know you're going to be with De Anza College for a little bit longer. Talk to me at what's next for Dr. Tabia Lee.
Well, of course, I'll keep shining a light and bringing public awareness to the things that are happening at De Anza, just because, well, it's not just De Anza. It's like throughout the California community college system and higher education, public education in California, and K through 12, unfortunately. So my hope is just to get people thinking about the tools that they're using, the pedagogies that they're using, and just to take a critical look at them again and determine for themselves, what is it grounded and rooted in? And is that what I want for the future, of the nation and the young one or the adult learner who I'm supposed to be serving as an educator, or as a counselor or a mentor, or, whatever it may be, whoever's interacting, with a learner, I consider them a teacher. So that's just part of my worldview. And I want people to realize these tools and things that are in use, they're rooted in these ideologies or philosophies, or however you want to, frameworks, ways of thinking and seeing the world, and know that we're seeing a lot of just a few, and we're seeing like the bad of it, but there's this whole other column on the chart where, of the skeptical eliminativism, that is ways forward, ways through, and ways out of this mess that we're in. And That's so right. I want to elevate the people that are there. Dr. Sheena Mason, Dr. Carlos Hoyt, Jason Littlefield is doing works with Empowered Pathways. He's working with schools and districts and providing alternatives and trainings in that respect. I've actually used Littlefield's Empowered Pathways theory as an instructional design framework. Like I've actually set and designed a whole class using the tenets of that. So there's many ways, instead of picking up the Black Lives Matter curriculum week, maybe we can do some curriculum design around empowered pathways and design a lesson implementing those things that will be something truly uplifting and nourishing for people, so that we can heal, because we've been really damaged, and this damage is something that can be reversed. It's just we have to start looking around and seeing the tools that are there and engaging them and making other people aware of them. I talk in there about Universal Design for Learning 2.0. They're revising that, so I don't know what's going to happen. So that's why I'm pointing to people to 1.0 and 2.0. Great principles for learning for all students, cross-disciplinary, something to definitely check out. So there's all these tools. I know right now some people aren't really loving the social emotional learning thing. But originally, CASEL, it was great before it became transformative SEL and whatever that's devolving into. It was a great way of thinking about the whole child and so forth, instead of just, math and English and taking the test, but everything, there are many pathways. There are many people talking about it. We just need to get the word out. And that's why every chance I get, I do speak about the different things that I've learned. And then as I learn more, I see other tools and things. So there's people innovating. Not just people saying this is wrong and oh, we're doing it bad and we're harming things, what do we do next? Give me something to use. So check those tools out. I encourage folks to just read Journal of Free Black Thought. Full disclosure, I'm on the board of directors there. So, I don't want someone to say, she keeps talking about that. I mean, I do, because I love that journal. It talks about solutions and diverse ways. And again, no one's saying there's one solution. That's why I love that there's all these different tools and ways ways to move us into more humanistic and just edifying and healthy and wholesome ways of being with each other and in the world. And I'm just hoping to see those flourish more. Oftentimes, I think maybe like school districts or like superintendents or people who make those decisions, like they see what's in front of them and they're not looking beyond. And I encourage those kind of leaders, please start looking beyond, because what's in the main industry right now it hasn't helped us through yet.
Yeah, it's not doing a lot of people a lot of favors. So, no, that's incredible. And yeah, obviously, people can go to the show notes for this episode and find some of the resources that Dr. Tabia Lee and I have talked about today. Such an incredible conversation. I really appreciate the work that you're doing, and the world needs more educators like you. Thank you so much, Dr. Lee, for joining me on the Derate The Hate podcast. I do greatly appreciate your time. I'm grateful for you. And I would definitely like to keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Friends, if there's anything in this episode that provided exceptional value to you, please make sure to hit that share button. Share it with your friends, share it far and wide. And of course, if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe right from our website so you can get the Derate The Hate podcast sent to your email inbox every week. So this is Wilk wrapping up for the week, saying get out there, be kind to one another, be grateful for everything that you've got, and remember, it's up to you to make each and every day the day that you want it to be. If there is something that you would like to share with me, you can catch me on most social media platforms, or you can email me directly, wilk@wilksworld.com. With that, my friends, I am going to back on out of here, and we will catch you next week. Take care.